you going to speak during the meeting?
No.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, I put them on the table. I'll send you. Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Something.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
How's it going? Good. Seeing you drive around a lot in the, yeah,
Insane.
that's good, dude.
You go up.
Getting the beers to the people.
Yeah. It's been a lot of beer going out. We've been selling out of cans before we can get it canned.
Really?
Yeah.
Right on, man. That's awesome.
It's been pretty good.
Good.
Like the all-time record that we did for outside sales in March. And I broke it again in April,
Very nice, dude.
and then like shattered it in May.
Okay, nice.
Steve's just like.
Stop selling so much beer.
Well, there was that in like in April, but he was like, "You hit 22. Yeah, I'm like, you were gonna be out of waters. Like,
Nice.
there was one time out of all IPAs.
Really?
I mean, like, half that's gonna be.
Yep, yep. Sure.
That's where you make the margin,
Right.
but yeah, it's just like, gotta wait a couple weeks.
Yeah. Right on, dude. That's awesome.
I just don't,
That's good. So you're a good hire. Nice.
it's much better than managing people.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
For sure.
Just get to drive.
Yeah.
Go in the bars and
Yes.
stores.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're just waiting for a quorum, correct?
2 more minutes.
Okay, sweet. Great. Okay, it's 5:30 and we have a quorum, so let's begin. Planning Commission, June 6th, 2024. I call this meeting to order. Paula, may we please have the roll call?
Addie Case,
Here.
Jody Cornett,
Here.
John Grant,
Here.
Philip Mosher is absent, Maria Pena is absent, Mark Popoff,
Here.
Nick Portella.
Here.
Commissioner Portella, can you speak up maybe or get closer?
Yeah, can you hear me better?
A little bit, but not great.
Hmm.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I hear you perfect.
Okay. You.
I'll try
Excellent.
I'll get my headphones in.
All right, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. If all commissioners have had a chance to review the agenda, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda with a second?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
The motion has been made to approve the agenda with a second. All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Next is the approval of the minutes from the February 1st meeting. If all commissioners have had a chance to review the minutes from that meeting, may I please have a motion to approve those minutes with a second?
I'll make motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll
I'll
second.
second that. All right, we've both seconded that. We've had a motion to approve the minutes from the February 1st meeting and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. You weren't here.
I abstain.
John Grant was not here for that meeting.
Watch the video.
I watched the video and but I'm still going to abstain.
Next is the time for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject matter that does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. So we do have some people in the audience. If you wish to make public comment, that's great. Come on up. Later in the agenda, we have a quasi judicial public hearing about the Basalt Commons building that is asking for a height variance. The only thing that we're going to be talking about in that section of the meeting is height. So if you want to talk about anything else with Basalt Commons, maybe like parking or anything else that's happening in your world, now would be the time to do that. But we will not be talking about parking if that's a concern for anybody during that hearing. Does anyone have any public comments? Nope. Okay. Moving on then. Quasi judicial public hearing. This is for conditional use permit application 21224 Chris Hodney. Please excuse me while I read this script. Now is the time specified for the Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the following matter. Consideration of conditional use permit application 212-24, requesting approval of a height increase to exceed the maximum allowed height of the underlying zoning district for a mixed-use multifamily development. The proposed height building of the building is 60 feet, which exceeds the maximum building height within the central business commercial zoning CBC district of 55 feet. The applicant is also requesting an extension of the 1-year expiration of the conditional use permit to 3 years. The applicant is proceeding with a site plan review to site and construct the development concurrently with this CUP application. However, the SPR approval is conditional on approval of the CUP. The substantive criteria upon which the Planning Commission will base its decision in this matter are found in the Dalles Municipal Code, Title 10, Section 10.3.1010.040, Section 10.3.020.050, Article 3.050, Article 5.050, and Article 6.090. A public hearing is required by law and certain rules apply. First and foremost, you must be recognized by the chair in order to speak and present testimony. When recognized by the chair, please proceed to the microphone and state your name and mailing address for the record. The hearing is required by law to be recorded. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the commission members and allow for challenges from the audience. I will open the public hearing with a staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this point is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about that case. After the staff report, we will hear testimony from the applicant. Next, there will be testimony from the proponents, those in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from the opponents, those not in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from anyone else who wishes to offer testimony on or ask questions about the application. Then, to honor the right of rebuttal, we will again hear from those in favor of the application. To expedite the hearing, the commissioners may ask questions of persons as they testify. When this process has been concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First of all, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. As in all land use hearings, there are a complete set of rules, procedures, and criteria we must follow. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commissioners and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with detail specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in the circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the law states the commission must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. These are the rules. Are there any questions? Okay. Have any members of the commission had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias which would prevent you from rendering an impartial decision on this matter?
No.
No.
I have not.
No.
Addie says no. And Addie shakes her head no. Does anyone in this audience wish to challenge the qualifications of the members of the commission? No. The public hearing is now open. May we please have the staff report?
Good evening, Joshua Chandler. It is. Joshua Chandler, Community Development Department. Give me 1 second here. So I share my screen for you. All right. Thank you, Chair Cornett. Commissioners, as mentioned, Joshua Chandler with the Community Development Department. This item that we're discussing this evening is conditional use permit number 212-24. The applicant is Chris Hodney. The address is 523 East 3rd Street. The zoning district is Central Business Commercial. The proposal, the applicant is requesting approval of a height increase to increase the maximum allowed height of the underlying zoning district for a mixed-use multifamily development. The proposed height of the building is 60 feet, which exceeds the maximum building height within the zone of 55 feet. The applicant is also requesting an extension of the 1-year expiration of the CUP to 3 years. The applicant is proceeding with a site plan review at this time to site and construct the development. And with this, concurrent with this CUP application, however, they see the site plan review approval is conditional on this approval tonight. So this is a subject property location here, 523 East 3rd Street. This is the former site of Griffith Motors. It fronts on East 3rd Street. It has frontages on the west side and west side of Laughlin Street and the east side of Jefferson Street with an alley in the rear. The proposed project, formerly titled the Basalt Commons, is a 5-story mixed-use development, 92,000 gross square feet. The first floor is retail, resident amenities, and building services. Floors 2 through 5 are 116 for-rent apartments. So the land use review process here, this project will consist of 3 separate actions currently in review. There's a replat that's in review at this time, which is a request to consolidate 3 tax parcels into 1. So the property is actually made up of 6 lots. Those 6 lots are part of 3 tax parcels. And the goal is to, at the end of the replat, would be to have just one lot by itself. The conditional use permit that's being discussed tonight is for a building height increase. And as mentioned, there is a site plan review that is currently under review with staff. And this is for the site and construction of the development. The site plan review approval is conditional on the approval of this conditional use permit. So the conditional use permit proposal, this is a building profile for you. The proposed building height is 60 feet. Within the zone, the max is 55 feet, but as I'll mention here, that you can actually, there's an increase allowed within the zone. And these heights do not include necessary roof structures. So just to put it into perspective for you, I wanted to show some lines here to show you what's allowed is in blue and what's proposed is in red. I'll get into some more detail about these heights here in a little bit. So the purpose of this additional height is to provide, it provides benefits to the vitality of the ground floor. It provides civic scale and prominence to the ground floor for pedestrian experience. It allows ground floor height that is consistent with commercial corner buildings within the area. Provides better proportion of ground floor height to overall building height. It improves leasability, creating a flexible retail space that is attractive to a wider variety of tenants. Ultimately, you could say it's future-proofing it for tenants in the future. And then it improves natural daylighting of the ground floor spaces. As you'll see, I'll highlight that as well. This is a height comparison that was provided in your packet. So on the left-hand side is the proposed height increase. On the right-hand side is the height that's permitted outright in the zone. You'll see probably the biggest change is on this next page. Be able to take a look on that ground floor. You see where the difference is, and that's when I was talking about that natural light. That light will be able to come in through the awning where you see people on the ground floor there. So light will come in and naturally light up the ground floor a bit more than a typical height would. And one thing I wanted to point out here is the necessary roof structures. I'll get into more of what those are. Basically, won't go into too much detail. Actually, they're parapets. You know, ultimately, roof structures, all of our roof structures have, all of our buildings have necessary roof structures, and these are measured at 3 feet 4 inches. This dimension does not change no matter the height. So I wanted to point that out. So review criteria. The first is that it's determining whether or not it's a permitted conditional use. The proposed use is conditionally permitted in the zone district where it's proposed to be located. Pursuant to the Dalles Municipal Code 10.505060, the maximum building height within the CBC zone district is 55 feet. However, the building height may be increased to 75 feet with a CUP. So if an applicant was proposing 56 feet or 75 feet, they would be following the exact same process. So the standards, and we'll touch on those, and they're actually addressed in the staff report, but basically the requirement is that the proposed use conforms to zoning requirements, standards of the applicable zone. So height limitation exceptions in residential zone, from the code, in non-residential zones, necessary roof structures, elevator shafts, and some other details here, not used for human occupancy with a height limit measured from the adjacent ground of 75 feet or less are not subject to the zone district height limits, meaning the reason we're talking about this building height being 60 feet is it's in a non-residential zone, so therefore anything above necessary roof structures that is not for human occupancy isn't technically measured in the overall building height. And that's an example of this is that, you know, with taller buildings, you will see HVAC equipment sitting on top of a building. We wouldn't measure the HVAC that sits on top of a building as part of the building height. That's something that's also mentioned up there, but it's for the building height here, 60 feet. That is for the area of human occupancy. And as mentioned, previously, all buildings within the CBC zoning district may be increased by 20 feet from 55 feet to 75 feet through the conditional use application process. So this is the review criteria that I'll go to a little more in detail. I just wanted to show it first off for you as we start going through each one of these. And first, we'll touch on the criterion that is met included in your staff report. The first discusses noise impacts across the property line shall not exceed 60 decibels. When it comes to noise impacts, staff is pointing out that the applicant is requesting the approval of a height increase to exceed the maximum allowed height of the zoning district. The proposed site uses are not expected to generate noise exceeding 60 decibels. However, routine testing and maintenance of a diesel generator will reach levels close to this. And to address this, the generator is placed within a roofed enclosure set back from the alley in Jefferson Street right-of-way. Furthermore, an exhaust muffler will be installed to reduce the noise to permissible levels. Staff determined that this height increase would have no impact on noise levels. Jumping to, it's actually finding 14 if you're following along in the staff report. But this is the third criterion for conditional use permits. Dust and other particulate matter shall be confined to the subject property. I hate to sound redundant this evening, but I will be repeating myself on a couple of these. Applicant is requesting approval of a height increase. Dust and other particular matter shall be confined to the subject property. Staff determined this increased height would not produce dust or particulate matter. Criterion number 4, excuse me, the following odors shall be completely confined to the subject property. I did not list all of those, but I can list them for you now. Industrial and/or chemical grade chemicals, solvents, paints, cleaners, fuels, fertilizers, manure. These are some of those that are listed on within the Dalles Municipal Code. The applicant is requesting approval of a height increase that exceeds the maximum allowed height of the underlying zoning district. Staff determined this increased height would not produce any of the above mentioned odors. So vibrations shall not be felt across the property line. Staff determined the increased height would not create vibrations across the property line. Number 6, the transportation system is capable or can be made capable of supporting the additional transportation impacts generated by the use. Some of the things that they touch on here are street designation and capacities, on-street parking impacts, bicycle safety and connectivity, pedestrian safety and connectivity. As mentioned, the applicant is requesting approval of this height increase to exceed the maximum allowed height of the zoning district. This increase in height does not directly impact the transportation system. Staff will review impacts of the transportation system with the proposed development during the concurrent site plan review application. So the next set, or just the one, is criterion 2. Lighting impacts across the property line shall not exceed 0.5 foot candles. This is a criterion that is met with conditions. I'll get to that condition and I'll show it to you as we move forward. But ultimately what this is applicant, as mentioned, requesting to exceed height of the zoning district. Staff will review the impacts of lighting associated with this development during the site plan review process. Condition of approval for this CUP will require that lighting impacts across the property lines not exceed 0.5 foot candles. As mentioned, this will be demonstrated in the site plan review approval, and it will be shown as a condition of approval with this application. And then the last criterion is number 7. This is criterion that is not applicable. This would be if it were located within a historic district. This building and property is not located within a historic district for the city of the Dalles. The other request, aside from the height, is an extension to the current 1-year CUP approval. And I'll get into that. So conditional use permits shall be valid for 1 year from the date granted by the commission. If construction is commenced within 1 year period, and is being pursued diligently toward completion, the CUP shall stay in full force for an additional year. So in the case of unavoidable delay or an extensive construction schedule, the commission may extend the time limit for completion of the project. So to kind of go back 2 years from when we actually last discussed this item, the reason we're back in front of you today is because the CUP approval has expired. As you can imagine, a project of this size isn't really contemplated in our code. There are many communities, CUP approvals are good for 3 years. There's many communities where the director of a planning department or a community development department can actually extend those. Those extensions are available currently with minor partitions, with subdivisions in our current code. However, the only extension available in the Dalles Municipal Code for a CUP is to go in front of the Planning Commission. So at this time, with this approval, with this proposal, the applicant is requesting the extension of the 1 year to 3 years to accommodate an extensive construction schedule. So the anticipated project schedule for this is 14 months. This is just design, entitlements, and building permit review. That is not breaking ground. So this is something that if you can imagine going through that whole entire process to then come back to the Planning Commission, it's a bit redundant, I think, for everybody involved. So asking for the 3 years is staff believes is also a fair request and something that is in front of you today. So conditions of approval, The final building height must be consistent with the plans included in attachment A. Those are included in your staff report. That's basically the building profiles that I was showing you. So this just ensures that the design follows what you're all improving this evening. Number two, following an approved CUP, the applicants must proceed with a site plan review to site and construct the development. As mentioned, those are in office now and currently under review. Prior to the site plan review approval for the proposed development, it should be demonstrated within the site plan review documents that lighting impacts across the property line do not exceed 0.5 foot candles. And then the last is the one we just discussed. The CUP approval shall be valid for 3 years from the date granted by the commission. If construction is commenced within this 3-year period and is being pursued diligently toward completion, the CUP will stay in effect in full force for an additional year. In the case of unavoidable delay or an extensive construction schedule, the commission may extend the time limit for completion of the project once again. So as I talked about, to kind of highlight this timeline, it's ultimately the applicant will not be moving forward with any final design plans until they have approval from the conditional use permit. So it's with a project of this scale, the amount of money and time that would be poured into something without assurance that there's an extended period of time on it, it probably wouldn't be the best to move forward in that case. So commission alternatives, there's 2 up here for you. Staff's recommendation is that the planning commission move to adopt resolution PC 622-24 approving CUP 212-24 with the proposed conditions of approval included with this report based upon findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth in the agenda staff report. The other option will be up here after you deliberate. If feel free, I can pull the screen up. And with that, I am going to quit sharing my screen and be available for any questions.
Thanks, Josh. Does anyone have any questions in regards to the staff report specifically?
Josh, is it normal that we have a vote brought to us before having a site plan review? Is that something that
Yeah, it's contemplated in the code. There's a 2-step process that the code has. So there's the conceptual review process, and that comes in for, I think if you remember, there was an RV park out on 2nd Street that did the conceptual review. So they came and asked for an extended period of time for people to stay on site. The next step after that would be going through the site and construction of the site for the site plan review. So the code does allow for both options. You can bring in a complete package, or you can do the conditional use permit first and then the site plan review second.
Okay. And then I think I got one more. Does anybody else have any questions?
I don't know.
Think so. We were talking about the conditional use and the findings and the criteria that was met for the candlelight. And then what was the other one was the second one?
Oh, of criterion met?
Yeah, numbers. Think. Sorry. Yeah, because it would be under conditions of the site plan review, correct?
The lighting would be under a condition of the site plan review, correct?
And then
And it's an ongoing condition for all properties to ensure that the lights aren't replaced in the future that would exceed that foot candle either.
And then the other findings, you had number 7, which did not apply for the historic districts. So if we went ahead and approved this, that would be up to the plan, your department to say that it was met,
Which part of it is met?
candlelight.
Yeah, yeah. So a photometric plan is typically the mechanism that's used to provide that. We actually request a photometric plan with a completed site plan review packet.
Okay. All right. That's all I got.
You have any questions? Any questions from Nick or Addie? Okay. Moving on then, does the applicant wish to present information about the proposal? Sure, come on up and just state your name and, excuse me, state your name and address and speak clearly into the microphone. That's okay.
There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. My name is Chris Hodney with Hacker Architects. Address is 555 Southeast MLK Junior Boulevard, Portland, Oregon, 97214, and representing the developer and property owner. I will go and share my screen here. Can you all see that? Looks like it. Okay. Trying to find the full screen. There it is. Okay, well, thanks for your time tonight, and good to see some of you again. It's been a couple years. Just as a reminder, when we first came here, I think it's relevant to what we're asking today. We met with our client on the site and kind of walked around the downtown, had lunch here, really just tried to get a sense for what's the character of downtown that the architecture or the existing architecture has. And it was really important to our client and to us that, the design of this building is authentic about the time and place it's built in. And to itself, but it has to fit in. It has to play nicely with its neighbors and be welcomed here. And I really love the downtown character that you have here. It's kind of classic Main Street architecture, and the pedestrian-oriented design guidelines of the district are really strong, and you see it particularly on Second Street and portions of Third Street. And so we saw a real great opportunity for this development to pick up on that, but in a modern, relevant way to a mixed-use multifamily building. I think that, one of the ways that we can do that with a contemporary design and building, the way we build things nowadays, is the ground floor. All these existing buildings, there's a huge variety of building widths and heights, and even styles, but all of them have a really prominent ground floor, really tall storefront windows, really great visual connection from the pedestrians to the inside of those stores or restaurants and other retail spaces, canopies and awnings, transoms, and even material detail or visual interest. These are all really critical, whether it's a one-story building or a 4- or 5-story building that you have here in town. And we kind of see these when you look around at a lot of the more prominent corner buildings in town. Those buildings do tend to be a little taller, usually 35 to 40 foot, even for a 2-story building. And all of them have taller ground floors, or at least the expression of the ground floor. 16 feet, I think, is the lowest on this page. But a lot of them are 18 and even 19 foot tall. And the Commodore, I think, is a really good example of one building in town that's very similar in height anyway to what we're talking about. We're estimating it's about 61 feet tall, and the ground floor expression is about 19 feet. So we think that's a really nice proportion for a taller building. And we're really interested in this building, our design, serving as a bookend to downtown, or almost a gateway, and working with the Commodore in that way. Josh showed you this diagram, and I'll talk through it again. On the right is the by right building section. So 55 feet is a pretty typical 5-story housing building. But the way that we design a lot of multifamily buildings in the market today, wood framed over concrete podium, just with structure and mechanical systems, and making sure we're maintaining a really humane and livable interior space for the apartments, a decent ceiling height. It leaves you with a 15-foot ground floor. And keep in mind that that is floor to floor. So once you take out structure, once you take out mechanical systems, sprinkler lines, plumbing drops, all that, you're really looking at an 11, maybe 12-foot ceiling for the retail tenants. And That works for some. That works for smaller spaces. It'll work for an office space, maybe a daycare center. But more active and more public scale spaces, the spaces that are really going to, for the life of the building, activate the downtown, are, restaurants, brew pubs or microbreweries, even specialty clothing shops, or maybe even event halls, or public meeting halls. Those spaces tend to be bigger and more public scale, and so they want taller ceilings. We're often being asked to have a minimum of a 15-foot ceiling, and even upwards of 17 for a larger space. So our intent with this height request, this additional 5 feet, is to use every bit of that for the ground floor. To make the ground floor exceptional, to give it that prominent height that we think is consistent with what we're seeing in the existing buildings in downtown, and more appropriate for a building of this scale. It's going to allow us to attract those most active and public retail tenants, like the restaurants and the brew pubs or event halls, give us flexibility in how we lease the space and future-proof it, as Josh said. And in that, it's going to help us with this site provide the most economic vitality and pedestrian activity to meet the goals of the district. And then Josh touched on this, but I'll echo some of what he said. The request for the expiration date partly is because here we are again 2 years later, and we don't want to have to do that again and take up your time. But the design documentation leading up to permits, typically for a building of this scale, is 8 to 12 months, just for us and our engineers and working with the contractor. And that's after the conditional use. Site plan review and building permits and demo permits can take 6 to 8 months. As Josh said, we are overlapping these as much as we can. But even then, we're looking at 14 months just with, everything has to go perfectly and smoothly. And we all know that this is a very volatile construction market and a very volatile financing market as well. So we want to give ourselves some buffer here to a reasonable degree to make sure that if the decision is approved after this hearing, we're not having to come back and go through the process and ask you again in 2 years. And with that, I'll end my presentation. Happy to answer any questions, but thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. Do you have any questions?
With about the ceiling heights, what would be the net ceiling height in this with a 20-foot height? I know the floor structure take up at least a foot, but I assume you have a drop ceiling in this.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. We would expect 15 to 17 feet.
Okay.
Would be the ceiling.
Nick or Addie, do you have any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, thank you. Does anyone wish to testify in favor of the application? No? Does anyone wish to testify in opposition to the application? Sure, come on up. Speak into the microphone and please state your name and address for the record. Okay.
This base has been here in the Dalles. I grew up here.
Chair Cornett.
Yes.
Hi, just want to say I can't see who's speaking and I can't hear anything either. I don't believe the microphone is on if anybody's speaking.
Can you hear me now? I don't know.
No, you might have to hit the button.
Is that red button on? All right, click that button.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're
There
better.
you go. Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
All right. Sorry about that.
All right, continue, please.
I am a land use planning consultant and I have done many projects for the Dalles and Wasco County and throughout this region. And I currently work for 13 small cities and 3 counties as a circuit rider on as needed basis. I tell you that so you understand that I do have some understanding of the laws. I'm concerned about what's happened here because I think there's been a grave error in the way this is processed. And I'll explain. The listed conditional uses in the CBD, or Central Business District zone, and I'm going to read some of them. Automotive service stations, automatic teller machines, conference and visitor and convention centers, community facilities, contractor shops, ad nauseum. There's a bunch of them, but they're all a specific land use. And then we get down to the development standards, and there in the height thing, it says 55 feet minimum, except 75 feet maximum with a conditional use permit. Where did that come from? It doesn't fit the rest of them. And the last time you heard this 2 years ago,
Sorry, let me interrupt. When you say where did that come from, it doesn't fit the rest of them. What are the
it
thems?
doesn't fit the rest of the conditional uses that are listed. It isn't the same type of a use. It's a mechanism to skip going through a variance. You even said it beginning at the beginning of the meeting. We're going to do a height variance. That's what should happen.
Okay.
A variance is what is the process that is required.
Okay.
And I think there's been a mistake. I understand it's in the ordinance, and I think it was there before Mr. Chandler got here, but it's improper. It should be a variance. And I'm going to read you briefly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to read you briefly. A variance may be granted whenever a strict application of the requirement of this title would impose unusual practical difficulties on one or more property owners or unnecessary hardships on one or more properties. The authority provided by this article to grant variances does not extend to the use regulations of any zone or district. A variance is what most cities use to allow people to step outside the ordinance a small amount. And not a conditional use. There's no specific, there's supposed to be clear and objective standards with the conditional use. There is with the variance. Yeah, all land use activities that are regulated by cities and counties are supposed to have clear and objective standards in their ordinance. This just says get a conditional use. And I urge you I know you'll want to talk to attorneys and whatnot, so I urge you not to make a decision tonight and listen to the staff and the city attorney. I believe that they've got to understand that this is incorrect. The variance is what the process that should be followed.
Okay. So I think my question first is, in the code that you've studied,
Yep.
in preparation, is there something in that code that for this specific zoning type, CBC, that a variance should be used instead of a conditional use permit?
There's nothing written in the CBD portion or whatever the Central Business District zone. No, there's nothing there that says a variance should be used.
But it does say that a conditional use permit should be used.
Yes.
So why would we use a variance instead of a conditional use permit
Because the
if that's what the
conditional
code
use
says?
is for a type of land use. Like the typical one is for a service station or a millage shop. This height variance, height conditional use doesn't fit the actual process that they're undergoing.
Sure, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is the process is explicitly outlined in that code. Get a conditional use permit.
I'm not making myself clear. I can see that. Well, I just wanted to have standing. That's all I needed.
Sure, and I understand that the way to say it's typically done this way is fair to say, but I think that typically would be allowed to be used in the event that nothing else explicitly stated how it should be done.
Typically, people will come in and want to exceed whatever the ordinance limitation is, and the staff will say, you need a variance. That's it.
Except?
I don't know where this came from. Last year, when I read the last model of this ordinance that I read, instead of just saying the conditional use are listed below, it said these are the only conditional uses that can be granted in this zone. And it didn't include this height conditional use. It was listed separately.
Okay.
It doesn't fit. I'm sorry.
Okay, so just real quick, just for conversation's sake, what is your suggestion?
I think they need to go back and go through the variance process, real clear.
Okay, but if a variance process isn't outlined in the CBC zoning,
It's not allowed in, it's not outlined in any zoning. It's a part of the administrative action or the land use actions available to the city and applicants throughout there's a list of, in the ordinance, there is a list of tentative or proposed land use actions. A variance is one of them. It's not listed in residential zones. It's not listed in commercial zones. It's just there in the book.
it's there in the Dalles Municipal Code book.
Yes.
Okay. This is beyond the scope of the hearing or not the scope of the hearing, but this is new information that isn't part of our packet. We don't research things for the specific meeting, things that are beyond the packet. We just look at this.
I understand.
And-
Well, I understand I'm bringing new information, and I'm not urging you to deny this tonight. I would ask you to continue and have your staff research it, because I think an error is being made.
Okay. Quick question. Again, it's not really that quick, actually. You come forth in opposition of the application based on that you think this should be a variance as opposed to a conditional use permit. Why are you bringing this up? Why do you think this is important?
I'm opposed to this project.
Okay.
I'm adamantly opposed, and I won't talk about it now, but I'm adamantly opposed to this project,
Okay.
and that's
Got it.
why I'm bringing it up.
Okay. Got it. So just to be clear, wishes for the project aside, you are suggesting that the applicant pursue a variance, even if the city allows that, to get to quite possibly the same result?
Quite possibly, but perhaps not.
Okay.
I can speak to it. Dan, good to see you. I would argue that this is not new information. Since I've been with the city since 2018, this is how the code has read. So if there's someone who came before me that added it into the code to maybe create this flexibility in the event a development like this were to come along, maybe that was contemplated pre-2018, but this is never anything that was added. And I definitely want to be clear, it was not added for this project.
Okay.
Chair Cornett,
Yes.
I might be able to offer some insight just with
Okay.
respect to this conditional use permit issue. I think I see sort of the position that the member from the public, who I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name or address for the record, because I think your microphone might have been off. So maybe this would actually be a good chance for you to provide that information so we can provide you notice of the decision. Your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, will you just say your name and address for the record again?
Dan Meter, 911 East 7th Street.
Thank you, Mr. Meter. I think I could see the point that you're trying to say. You're trying to draw the conclusion that because the code standard in 10.5.050.060, which lists the development standards in the CBC zone, which is the zone that we're in, indicates that 75 feet maximum is allowed with a conditional use permit, that the commission has the choice to allow up to 75 feet maximum for conditional uses, but that is not what it says. And what it says is it allows up to 75 feet maximum with a conditional use permit, combined with the language indicated that the planning director just indicated stems from the conceptual two-step process, which contemplates the use of a conditional use permit. The code is clear that it allows the planning commission to authorize up to 75-foot structures as a development standard applicable to developments located within the CBC2 zone district and any other part of the CBC zone district. And so I hope that's clear, and I hope I didn't further confuse the issue. The bottom line, as far as the city is concerned, with respect to its own code, is that this has been a longstanding code. We've used it elsewhere, and it very clearly contemplates the use subject to the conditional use process review and subject to conditional use process approval process, which is a public process, which is the very reason I'm even speaking about this at the moment, is to ensure the public participation component here. It's very regular. And as the planning director mentioned, we used the same exact process during the approval of an RV park last year. And so I hope that's clear. If any commissioners have any questions, or if the chair has any questions connected with my legal opinion, I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Can I finish now?
Yeah.
I respectfully disagree with him, and I didn't expect you to make a decision tonight. As I said, all I wanted to do is establish I have standing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. Does anyone else wish to testify in opposition to the application? Okay. Does anyone wish to testify that is not in favor or opposition, or they would just like to ask questions on the application? No? Okay. That. Do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision?
Sure, actually. Yes.
Okay. Nick and Addie, do you have enough information to?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, excellent. If we're ready for deliberations, I will close the public testimony portion of this hearing. Okay. Public testimony portion of this hearing is now closed. Let's discuss. I think I'll just, well, does anyone else have any just thoughts about the opposition for the application?
Do we have to finish up with ending
I don't think,
with
yeah, sorry.
Believe
Well,
there's a right for
yeah, excuse me. Public hearing is reopened. My apologies. Does the applicant wish to care to offer rebuttal to that?
Chair Cornett.
Thank you. Yes, Jonathan Kara.
The public hearing has never been closed. The public hearing closes when a motion is made. And so there's no need to reopen the public hearing. And if you're talking to the applicant, which the commission has the right to do, you do not need to reopen the public testimony portion of the hearing. This is just very procedural. I'm sorry for the, sort of out of nowhere, rules here, but we're just trying to follow state law. It sounded to me like you wanted to reopen it, but it's not necessary. It's always been open.
All right. I only said that because I specifically said the public hearing is now closed.
You said the public testimony portion of the hearing is now closed. I am 100% certain of it.
Yes, I did. I apologize.
You're good.
Okay. Anywho's, we're moving on with, thank you. We're moving on with deliberations with the commission. Does anyone have any immediate thoughts about the application? Anything discussed? Things in opposition to?
Well, I have a comment. If they went with the 15-foot height, which would, if you subtract 3 feet for the, if we went with the 15-foot height, after subtracting 3 feet for the floor and ceiling structure, you'd have a room that'd be roughly the same height as this one. And looking at the plans, the shops would be about as deep as this room is long. Some of the places they listed here, a lot of business, they've dropped the ceilings down quite a bit. So I just don't see any real overreaching need to have a 20-foot first floor. And, if it's only 15 feet, they're within the code. They don't need the, variance.
I, I mean, it opens up that commercial area for other, markets to take place. And I think that's what what they stated in the beginning. Um, so
The overall height of this only building downtown that's that height would be the Commodore, and that's several blocks away. Even at 55 feet, this would just dominate that entire neighborhood. I think I'm trying to think. I think the only two-story building nearby would be the lawyer's office. I'm trying to think. Maybe there's something on the next block. So, a five-story building, even at the uh, maximum height that's allowed without a variance, it would pretty much dominate the area. I don't really think we would need to make it any taller.
I don't know. I can understand why it would need to be taller when I think about like the giant things that like the breweries have in them, like the big tanks that, when you go through like a tasting kind of thing that brings a lot of traffic. And I could see, they had mentioned like breweries being like one of the main commercial spaces that they could open up to, and those are like pretty large, and I can't imagine. I would imagine that they would want more space rather than to be cramped. And I don't know. I can't imagine that like 5 feet is gonna make a huge difference. If like the 55 already feels big, I can't imagine 60 is gonna change the entire like landscape more than 55 would.
is that something that has in the previous conditional use, was that discussed for like breweries and to be in that bottom floor?
Yeah, this is like the exact same, aside from the extended conditional use permit.
So I mean, to be able to have those tanks, you've got to have that space. So I mean, a brewery wouldn't be able to do it without that extra space. I mean, unless they're, doing, I don't even think a 10-barrel system would be able to fit in there.
Yeah.
But I do have just a question of, when we go from 55 feet to 75 feet in the conditional use, are we going off of the criteria met that you did in the staff reports to exceed that 55 feet?
Yeah, and I touched on it a little bit in the beginning. How the code ultimately allows an increase, a 56-foot tall building to a 75-foot tall building would follow the exact same criteria.
And so as long as all of the staff goes through every single one of those criteria, then that's how they would determine if we go over 55 feet.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and just for the record, I think you and I were the only ones that were here when this came through last time, maybe. But yeah, this application regarding the conditional use permit for height is identical to, as far as my recollection serves me, identical to the one that we said okay to 2 years ago. The only difference
it's
is
exactly the same.
yeah, okay, yeah, Nick was here. So the only difference is this extra time needed for that conditional use permit, so the applicant can continue to operate on their project. I have nothing else to aside from we follow what's in the written code. It's pretty explicit in the code of how this process works. Like, I don't think we missed anything this time. I don't think we missed anything last time. It wasn't brought up last time. Nothing's changed.
I would like to make a motion on voting on these separately for the height increase and for the extension.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Have to have a second.
Making a formal motion. Okay, I'll second it.
Okay. In that case, let's separate this. Actually, I don't think we can separate this because it's all part of the same application.
Well.
I don't think that we can dissect the application like that.
I mean, technically, a condition could be amended.
A condition
So
could be amended.
that would be in the event that something different, you're wanting something different, would probably need to be shown in an amended condition. So just lay that out for you. Voting on it separately, and maybe that is maybe your maybe the way you get to where you're wanting to vote on something separately. I mean, I guess hypothetically you could vote on every single one of these conditions. So I think at the end of the day, the decision would be whether or not to approve this application.
Sure. Thank you. What condition do you wish to alter? You want to separate these, one for building height, building height as one part, the extended CUP as another part. What
Correct.
condition are you wishing to change?
So I would just like to vote on them separately. I want to deliberate separately on the extension of time, because I want to, I don't know if I have enough information on that to make a decision on that particular subject. I think
Okay.
we've talked about the height,
Mhm.
but I don't think we have any previous. We don't have like a for instance on expanding that time frame, because we have 1 year, but then if they're in the project, an extension of another year, and then it can come back to the board, which, I mean, I understand the having that flexibility of that 3 years, but a lot of things can happen within 3 years, and I would, I'm not quite sure if I'd be on board for, definitely on board for, the height increase, but I'm not sure how I feel about the extension.
Okay. Would
Cornett?
you like to share your just thoughts on your apprehension for granting the extension so that the rest of the commission can talk about that and see if that's something they agree with or not?
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor for voting on them separately. So we would have to do a deliberation and then a vote of the commission. Correct?
Chair Cornett,
Yes.
can I step in? Can I please ask Paula? Paula, did we have a motion and a second?
Yes, but no vote.
What was the motion?
Motion was to vote separately for the height increase and the extension of the time period.
Okay, we can vote on that. Okay. All in favor of voting on these two, or separating this conditional use permit into two separate items, one for the height, one for the extended CUP, into two separate things, all in favor of altering how that is being decided, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, raise your right hand, say nay. Nay. Okay, that's 3-2. So we will continue seeing this as one piece. Okay. Jonathan, I cut you off to get that. Thank you for the interjection. Do you have anything else to add as we continue this?
Yeah, the appropriate way to do exactly what Commissioner Grant is intending to do, which is to have a discussion connected with the 3-year portion of the condition, is just to adopt, if the planning commission's other, or if Commissioner Grant is otherwise in support of the resolution, is to adopt resolution 622-24 as amended, and then to amend that condition, whatever it is. You can make it 10 years or 1 year or whatever the case may be, but it's to have one motion on that resolution. If the commission supports the approval of the application, which is the height variance, it would just simply be to amend that condition. So you would just say, I move to approve resolution 622-6-24 as presented, except making it 2 years instead of 3 years. And that would be a sufficient motion.
Got it. What do you propose as opposed to 3-year?
I don't have anything that gives me an inclination to exceed what we already have in the code.
Well, it was described in the application, or at least in the staff report, that they are 14 months, which is more than a year, obviously, from still building this plan. So that means that 2 months prior to them building this, they're going to be here again. And
Right.
we're going to be here again talking about the same thing.
Correct, which means that that would be something in the code that we would have to take a look at. Instead of, if we have it in the code, there's got to be something, at least compelling to go 3 years. I mean, the verbiage is that we got the 1 year, and going along with the process, it extends to 1 extra year, correct, Josh?
Once construction begins, then it extends for an additional year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Automatically, without their having to ask?
it does. Yeah. Well, yeah, ultimately it has to be, be pursued diligently toward completion.
So, and I think in the application, they are going to say it's going to be more than 1 year. So, I mean, like, it's not even, it's basically a non-starter for the applicant if we're not going to give them the extension.
But in the future, as far as setting a precedence, are we just going to, anybody who has, 13 months, are we just going to extend that?
I don't think so. I think that's a fair point, but this isn't just some regular project. Like, aside from the Google plants, this is one of the largest projects the downtown's ever seen. So
But-
we use our best judgment to determine that.
We got to be going.
Oh, sorry, I just had a clarifying question. So like if we were to not do it for the 3 years and do it for the 1, like John is suggesting, we would literally be voting again in a year just on the height variance again. Essentially, we would just like keep voting on this height variance every year forever.
I think so, or whatever other condition came up, or not, excuse me, not condition, whatever other thing. Well, yeah, condition, any other thing that came up that would require another conditional use permit.
Yeah. And if I can speak on it, as you can imagine, the amount of uncertainty that you would be placing on an applicant would be 12 months into a design to have to go in front of the planning commission again for the planning commission to make that decision or not. So 12 months of hiring architects and engineers, I can only imagine how much that would cost. And bringing it back, it would almost be just I don't know. It's a lot to put on someone with a lot of uncertainty for a project like this. Like I said, I mean, it's 14 months before we're even getting to the point where we're breaking ground.
And I would say it's more normal for a conditional use permit to be greater than a year in in some other city.
Right. But as we've stated before, we're not in a different city. And I totally get it. I understand the time frame. But what I'm going to is the code that we have. And we're talking about, this isn't just any other project, but when future projects come along, that is going to be an argument brought to us, unless the code is actually, changed.
And I think I know what you're saying there, but
I just want an actual something to given to come to an actual decision to say, yes, this is, we have ground to stand on in the future. If we're just going to say we got 14 months, I don't think that is a good enough reason to bypass a code.
Well, I think the code allows for the commission to make this decision simply in the language of, in the case of unavoidable delay or an extensive construction schedule, the commission may extend the time limit for the completion of the project. So there is flexibility for the commission to make a decision, potentially on a case-by-case basis. There's not a set metric of the amount of time in which you should extend that, but I would say from the information that's been provided, one could argue that it's an extensive construction schedule.
and just real quick, I get what you're saying, like, okay, the sign stuff that we did a couple months ago.
Right.
Like that is specifically interpreting the black and white letter for letter code. It's like, we think the code says this is the sentence that we're working with, and that's it. But the way the code's written and the way the code's written, it allows us to say 3 years is okay. Allows us to say 2 years is okay. It doesn't force us to say 3 years is okay for everybody after this. The precedent is allowing us to be able to give an extension if we like. Like the precedent is being able to exercise that granting of extra time. It's not always, it's not the fact of granting extra time always.
Okay.
I get what you're saying though. Like I get what you're saying, but like we're okay.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to make a motion to adopt resolution 622-24 approving conditional use permit 212-24 with the proposed conditions of approval, included with this report based on the findings and fact and conclusions of law set forth in the agenda staff report.
I second that.
Was the public hearing closed?
The public hearing stays open until a motion has been made, seconded, and voted on, Paula. The public testimony
Okay.
portion of the hearing has been closed.
But I thought, okay.
Okay. So I've made a motion. It's been seconded by Commissioner Portella. All in favor of adopting resolution 622-24 approving conditional use permit 212-24 with the proposed conditions of approval included with this report, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. That's 3. All not in favor of approving this, say nay. Or raise your hand, say nay. That's
Nay.
1. All abstaining. And 1 abstaining.
Yeah, Jonathan, can you remind me the bylaws? Is it is a majority of the individuals we have, or is it, I forget. I'm blanking.
Let me tell you, for a quorum, we have 5 commissioners in attendance and voting tonight.
Yes.
And what was the vote?
3 yay, 1 nay, 1 abstain.
A quorum requires at least a majority of the commission, which ordinarily needs 4 commissioners. And so a quorum is 4 commissioners of our 7-member commission. Let me see, 1 second.
you want me to read it from the bylaws?
I'm reading the bylaws. Just give me one moment, please. Decisions shall be rendered by those commissioners present, and the majority vote of those members present shall prevail. This is bylaws section 1I3. And so, again, I'll read it again. Decisions shall be rendered by those commissioners present, and the majority vote of those members present shall prevail. In this case, there are 5 commissioners present. A majority vote requires 3 affirmative votes for it to pass.
Okay. So there you have it. 3 A's. We have moving on to the resolution. Thank
Can I
you,
ask,
applicant.
Chair Cornett, can I ask who abstained?
It was John Grant abstained.
Thank you.
And then the nay was Commissioner Popoff, and the yeas were Commissioner Cornett, Commissioner Case, and Commissioner Portella.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. So next is the resolution approval of conditional use permit 212-24.
Excuse me, Chair Cornett. Jonathan, does the public hearing close now?
Yes, the public hearing closes automatically at the when a vote's been made and completed. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Resolution PC 622-24, approval of conditional use permit application 212-24, Chris Hodney, for approval of a height increase to exceed the maximum allowed height of the underlying zone district for a mixed-use multifamily development. The proposed height, I'm going to skip this. The applicant is also requesting an extension of the 1-year expiration of the conditional use permit to 3 years. All in favor of resolution PC 622-24, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. All those not in favor say nay.
Nay.
Nay, that's 1 nay. All those abstaining? And 1 abstain. There was not. I moved to vote on resolution PC 622-24. May I please have a second?
I like the second.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor of resolution PC 622-24, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 3 ayes. All those not in favor say nay.
Nay.
Nay, it's 1 nay. All those abstaining? It's 1 abstain. Sure. Thank you. Procedure is important. Okay, so that is done. Any staff comments or project updates?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks everybody for your participation this evening. As you all know, we are in the middle of our housing production strategy process. This is going to last us through to the end of the year. So I do appreciate everybody's attendance and participation at the meeting on first part of May. I'm blanking on the date right now. The next step in this will be interviews with some of our local housing producers over the next couple weeks, kind of get their input, their thoughts on, maybe the different struggles, barriers that they deal with in producing housing. So that's all part of this whole process. The next joint session will be July 18th. It'll be a planning commission and city council joint session. Probably not going to be there, but I'm telling you anyways, we
Thank
can
you.
send out the information ahead of time, and more than happy if anybody can't make these meetings, feel free to just send us over some comments and we can make sure that maybe those comments are included into the conversation overall. Development, it's this time of year when the sun comes out that development starts ramping up, and we're starting to see that some more. So there are, we're getting pretty busy. So it's a good thing overall. Maybe too busy at times, but there are, a lot of applications coming in for all different types of applications. Our pre-application conference that we have, site team, it is jam-packed every other week. So there's a lot of things on the move, a lot of people interested in moving forward with some of their projects. Coming up in this next few months, we'll be doing some updates to our floodplain ordinance that we have. I think everybody may know that our floodplain mapping will be adopted here probably close to the end of the year. There was a floodplain maps that were produced with an appeal period that ended in January. The city, we requested appeals and comments from any impacted property owners. We received some comments, and actually I was able to work with FEMA's engineers to submit a comment on behalf of the city and the residents to make some changes to that to those maps. So we are going back into another 90-day appeal once those maps are ready. So working with FEMA, these things take a long time. I think the process has been going on for 10 years now to update maps from 40 years ago. So long story short, kind of boring stuff, but we'll be working through some floodplain updates for you here probably in the next few months. And then just a plug for our historic preservation, as well as our rare Ann Moorhead. We've been graced with her work over the past few months. She's wrapping up and she'll be leaving the city here mid-July. She's just been doing some amazing work. And one of those projects she's working on, I would encourage everybody to go take a look at it. There was a great event that we had a few weeks ago, Illuminate the Dalles. This is a projector system that's set up to bring back, they call ghost signs. So there's the signs that are faded on the side of the Gitchell building. So we had an art installation that projects those signs, kind of recreates those signs on the side of the Gitchell building. It's a permanent installation. So if you missed it, you still have a chance to pop down there. It's really cool. Head down there as soon as it starts getting dark and you see it's some really cool. There's an old owl cigar sign that literally takes up the entire side of the building, and they've recreated it. So it's really cool. It pops. It's a fun thing to go take a look, and it's up right on the side of the freeway. So hopefully it's going to bring in some tourists and some traffic to our downtown area. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Are those lights on all the time?
They go on right at sunset.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, right. Every day, I mean.
Yep. Every day. Till they break, I guess.
Okay, got it. I don't have any questions. Are there any commissioner comments or questions in general?
Are we going to be ramping up with more planning commission meetings in the future? So I think
at this point, and my apologies, it has been a little bit of a delay. I think some of that delay is we're short staffed, taking on some of these bigger code revision processes. They're a big lift, and with all the current development we have going on, those are kind of the basically they take priority over some of our code revisions. So I will hope to move through with some meetings in the next few months. I think the ones that will be happening in July and October for sure for the housing production strategy. But at this point, I think I'm planning the schedule out on an as needed basis, depending on when an application comes in for a quasi judicial meeting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're all busy, and it's hard to make a bunch of meetings, but I do definitely think that it's important to be able to get the planning commissioners together to kind of know what's going on. In case we're out in town, people are asking questions, or we just have some type of. I mean, I know that we get emails for notices, but yeah, just I think the last one was the meeting minutes were from February.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we lost our senior planner in March,
Right.
And she was handling most of our long range planning. And then after that, we have kind of needed to move into current planning stuff. So believe me, I'd like to get more stuff in front of you. I have a whiteboard in my office that is jam-packed full of things to do. Long range planning is a big lift. There's a lot that goes into it. So I do appreciate your patience, but we will try to get back and move in and roll it on this like we were in these couple months last year, basically. So thank you for that though.
Thank you.
And yeah, just the record, I won't be here July 18th, as you stated. Yeah, just letting everyone know. If that's all, meeting is adjourned. Thank you. I get it.